So I'm gonna start in Piscal and make some art for the background, and I'm also gonna make a couple like a button to start the game. So I'm gonna go over to Piscal. Uh, I'll just make a couple little backgrounds. So I'm gonna make a larger canvas. The default Scratch canvas, I think, is actually, let's see. Actually, I'm not 100% sure. Let's just Scratch canvas size. Okay, so it's 480 by 360 pixels wide. Oh, this looks like you can change that. Huh. Oh no, this is an extension. Okay, yeah, we haven't. Yeah, this is an extension, so you can make changes to the canvas. But at least we now know the default is 480 by 360. So in Piscal, I could change this size to 480 by 360, but I have to turn off maintain aspect ratio. That's gonna be pretty large. Like if I go to the largest pen size, actually that's not so bad. Okay, so I'll use that. So I'll make like a little splash screen. So maybe I'll fill in like a color that I want to use for the background. And then I'll just write the name of my game here. You could use any art program to do this. I'm just using Piscal because it's easy. So I'm just going to write my game. I'll call it cat. Cat versus birds. So just a name for the game. And I'll leave a little space down here for the buttons. I'm going to make those as separate sprites. I don't want it to be in the same area because I need the size of the sprite so it knows where it'll click. And then I'm just going to make a little background for the game so that it'll be clear when we change scenes. So maybe I'll make like a little ground. That's a little... I actually think it's more like down here. So I'll make a little ground. And then I'll make a little sky. Fill that in. Okay. And you could make more scenes, like maybe you want some instructions. You could maybe like duplicate this and actually let's just make a new frame and let's fill in the frame, but I want this other color. There we go. And I'll just draw some instructions real quick. So I'll draw like the arrow keys. Usually I draw with a tablet, so this looks pretty bad, but that's okay. Okay, move. And that's actually all we have for now, so maybe I'll add more instructions later. But let's move this down a little bit and fill that in. And I'll write instructions. Okay, this is pretty bad, but for the demo, that's fine. Okay, so let's save this. So I'm gonna call this backdrops. And so I'll save as a Piscal file. And then I'm also gonna export it. So I don't wanna scale it up because I drew it at the right resolution. And so I'll scale at 1, and then I'm gonna draw a zip, and I'll just put UI in front of it instead of sprite, or maybe BG for background. And I'll click download zip. So we've got a few backgrounds. You can make more backgrounds if you wanna have like more scenes in the game. gonna create a new sprite and make a couple buttons. So I'll make the buttons, instead of 32 by 32, I'll do like 32 by 16. So they'll be kind of small, but that's okay. So for my buttons, I'm gonna use a little rectangle as a guide. So I'll turn on my onion skin. And then maybe I'll draw a little background in a different color. Maybe I'll make it like orange. Okay, and I'll fill that in. And then I'll write start. I should have made this a little bit bigger, but that's okay. Actually, that's not so bad. Start. Okay, we have start. And then I should have duplicated this first, but that's okay. Let's just fill this in. And then I'll have instructions. This is going to be hard to fit, but let's see how I do. Instruction. Okay. I didn't really have enough space for this, but hopefully people will know what that means. Anyway, I just need some buttons. Maybe I would have like a quit button or start over or whatever, but I'm just going to use this as an example. So let's save this, and we'll call this buttons. And I'm going to export this at 1.0 and just call this buttons. And we'll see how that looks. We might need to make it bigger. And then the last thing I'm going to add, this part is going to be a little bit more advanced, but if I want to display the score somehow without using like the Scratch variable thing, Scratch doesn't actually have like text built in a way that's easy to use. So I'm just going to make my own text for numbers and then a little label for the score. So actually, let's add a new frame here, and I'll just use this as a label for the score. So I'll just write score like that. So let me make sure to save that and then export it again. And then I'm going to make one more sprite with all my numbers. So I'm going to make this small. I'm going to do 16 by 16. And I'm just going to draw numbers. Again, you don't have to use Piskel for this if you want it to look better than what mine is looking like. But I'm just going to start with 0. And I'm just going to do all the digits. So there's 1, there's 2, 3, 4. And we're going to be a little clever about how we make this work. But we'll add some limitations so that we don't have to account for every single number. So there's 9 digits. So I have, starting with 0, 1, 2, 3, all the way up to 9. And so we'll download these as sprites, and then we'll add them in, and we'll use this to display the score. This part is, again, a little bit tricky, but we'll go over how to do it. So I have my numbers, so I'll save this. Again, you could use Photoshop for this or, anything else, but I'm just using Piskel because I've already used it a bunch. So I'm going to save this as numbers, save the Piskel file, and then download the sprite. So I'll call this numbers. And by naming all this stuff, it just makes it easier to use because we can see what it is instead of like new Piskel 3 or whatever. It makes it easier to know what we're looking at when we go over to our downloads folder. Okay, so I'm done with Piskel. I'll leave these here in case I want to edit them later. I'll go back to Scratch, and let's just organize this a little bit. So I downloaded all this stuff. I'm going to open up a new window and go to Art, and I'll bring in my Piskel files that I made, and then I have these zips. I'm going to delete this one. I'm just going to double click to unzip these. On Windows, you have to click on Extract All. Okay, and then I'll delete this little here. And it looks like I didn't get my button one. That's okay. So I'm going to drag these guys over here. So I've got everything nice and organized in my art folder. So I'll just delete those zip files. Okay, so now I've got all the sprites I need, so let's go ahead and update our UI. I'll start with my backdrops. So I have these 3 backdrops. I have my start screen, my instructions, and my game background. So back in Scratch, I have the stage here. This is where I can add the backdrops. So I'm gonna upload my first backdrop, which is my main screen. And so I'm gonna have to make some changes to the way the game is designed for this to work. So I'm gonna name this main, or actually let's just call this title. So this will be our title screen. And I'll delete this other backdrop. I don't need that anymore. Just the blank one. And then I'm gonna upload my instructions, and I'm gonna upload my game background. So for the instructions, I'll just rename this instructions. And for my game background, I'll call this game. Okay, you might have multiple scenes or whatever. I'm just gonna, start with one. Okay, so back in my code, a lot of things are gonna change. But let's just set up our stage first. So in our stage, we can select the stage just like we can one of our sprites. So when we select the stage, our code window changes to the stage. And so in here, we can, add when our guys clicked, we are going to show the splash or title screen background. So we'll go to looks, switch backdrop to title. So when we run our game, we're going to get that title. And when we see the title, we're going to hide the other stuff. And so a lot of stuff is going to change in terms of when it gets added to the screen. So we're going to have to move a bunch of different stuff around, but we don't have that many components. So that won't be too bad. But if you have a game with a lot of components, you might want to start with your title screen and stuff first. Okay, so we're going to add in a start button, and when we click the start button, we're going to hide all of the title screen stuff, and we're going to show all of the game stuff. So that's really going to change the sort of progression of how everything works. So I'm going to add this sprite. I'm going to go to my buttons, and here's my start button. It's actually really small. Let's see how it looks. I might want to export it larger. Yeah, it's really small. All right, let's make it bigger. So I'll go here and export it at 2x. And let's call this buttons. Okay. So in my downloads folder, it's still pretty small, but that's okay. I'm just going to go with that for now. Maybe I'll update it later. I'm going to throw this over here and replace my other buttons. And let's go back to Scratch and try it again. So here's my start button. And I'm just going to drag this down here. So I'm just using the editor interface to drag it down here. And so when we click the start button, that's when we're going to start the game. And so in my control setup, or sorry, my events, I'm going to say when the green flag is clicked, we're going to show this because it might be hidden. We're going to hide it once we actually start the game. And then when this sprite clicked. So this is when the user clicks on a sprite with the mouse. We haven't used this one yet, or at least I haven't. So when this sprite is clicked, we're going to broadcast to the whole game that the game has started. So we're going to broadcast, and we'll make a new message called start game. And then we'll hide this sprite. So if I click this, right now all it does is hide the sprite, but that's the, we can see it's working. So then let's add our instructions button, which is completely unreadable, but maybe people will know what I'm talking about. And I'll just put that right there. And that's going to be basically the same code. So, when we click we are going to show, because it's going to hide afterwards. And then when we click the sprite itself, we're going to hide it. But we're going to send out a different event. So we're going to say broadcast instructions. And we'll say OK. So we have a few different scenes that we're going to show. So now we kind of have to just like connect everything together. And so we have these two new sort of possibilities. We have the start game and we have the instructions. And so we kind of have to go through step by step and say what we want to happen when those things happen. So let's start with our stage. So when we receive start game, we're going to change the backdrop to game. That's pretty straightforward. And then when we receive instructions, we're going to switch the backdrop to instructions. And then we haven't set this up yet, but there's going to be like an end game scenario where we're just going to go back to the start screen. You could, of course, make like an end game screen. You can make a lot of other stuff, but we're just going to keep it simple for now. So this doesn't exist yet, but we'll make it when we receive, let's make a new message, end game. Then we'll go back to the title screen. So we'll switch backdrop to title. Okay, so that's our stage. Our stage should just update, you know, as we progress through the game. So let's see if that works. So if I go to instructions, there we go. If I start the game, there we go. And that's pretty much it. So, you know, when we end the game, we'll go back to the title, but we can't end the game quite yet. Okay. So let's update our sprites. So let's start with our player sprite. So now any green flag has to be replaced with a game started signal or broadcast. So there's a lot of them in here. So we're just going to switch them out real quick. But yeah, you can see it would be good to, you know, plan ahead, which we didn't do, but that's okay. And the one green flag that we are going to have is when we start the game, we actually want to hide our player now. So we're going to hide this guy. And now all of these are going to be replaced with a when I receive start game. So we'll put one there, get rid of that. Maybe I'll change this ahead of time. We'll throw this guy over here. Okay. So I'm just swapping all of these guys out. And oh, we have a bunch of these. Okay, I think that's the last one. And then we just want to make sure to show it. I'm going to add that to this go to right here. So I'm going to go to the position, and then I'm just going to show the sprite. Okay, so that should take care of our main player. Let's just test that real quick. Okay, so we start, and there's the player. Okay, that's good. Okay, let's go to our sprite. So same thing here. Any green flag now is replaced with the when I receive. So we're just going to throw that on there. Get rid of that. Throw this on here. And throw this on here. And then this one, again, I'll hide. So I'll go to the bird, and I'll go to hide when the game starts. Let's move this up here. And then when we either spawn or start as a clone, we want to make sure to show. So I'll put a show there, and I'll put a show there. Maybe I'll put it at the end, actually, just so we'll be in the right place. Uh-oh. Oh, I forgot to change this. This is the wrong signal. This needs to be start game. Okay. There we go. Okay. I think we're almost done. We just have to make sure the instructions turn off when we start the game. So let's go to events. When I receive start game, we need to hide. There we go. Okay. And so now the last thing that we'll do to set up our little like game loop is we'll set, once we eat 10 birds, we'll go back to the title screen. So let's go to our player. And we kind of started this already when we said, when I receive start game, set the score to 0, and then forever if the score equals 10. So now instead of setting the score to 0 here, we'll send out an end game signal. So we'll broadcast end game. Okay, so now if I eat 10 birds, we should go back to the title screen. Some of my birds are glitching out. I'll try to figure out what's going on there later. Okay, so that almost worked. I forgot to get rid of my... so let's hide this guy when that happens. Or actually, let's use a signal because we might want other stuff to happen. So let's say when I receive end game, we need to hide our player. And same thing with our sprites. Okay, when I receive end game, we need to hide. Okay. So let's see if that works. I still have a weird bird glitch. I'll have to figure that out. Oh. Okay. Almost got it. We still have our birds going. I didn't really think about that. I might have to figure that out later. We get the basic idea. But we didn't bring our buttons back. So yeah, once we start switching between the scenes, we have to... we have a lot of different possibilities. Okay, so when we get end game, we need to show our buttons again. When I receive end game, we have to show. Okay, I think that takes care of everything. Let's go over the score real quick, and then that'll be good enough for our basic UI. Any questions on any of those? So there's a lot of like new blocks that we have to set up, but the basic idea is pretty much the same for everything. Okay, let's add in our score real quick. So I'm gonna add another sprite. I'm gonna go to my numbers, and I'm gonna start with number 0. And then I'm gonna open up this sprite and go to costumes, and then I'll just add in all the rest of my numbers. This is gonna be a little bit more advanced. You don't have to do this if you don't want to, but I think a lot of people will want to do this. So we're just gonna add it in. Okay, so my number, I'm gonna start with just a single digit. It's pretty small. Maybe I'll export it at 2. Okay, let's see if that looks better. Yeah, I think that's better. Let's replace this in here. And so then in Scratch, I'll just delete this and, whoops, add a new one. Okay, so there's my score. For some reason it won't let... Sometimes I can click it pretty easily and sometimes I can't. Let's put it up here. Now I can click it. Okay. And then let's add our little score label. So that's in my buttons even though it's not a button. It just says score. Okay. So this one is going to be a little tricky, but basically whenever we update the score, we want to change that number. But the way we're going to use it, the way we're going to do it requires a little bit of math. It's kind of interesting, but it's also kind of tricky. So maybe you guys will enjoy it. But if it seems too annoying, don't worry about including it. Okay, so let's move this over here and put this right here. And so we're going to use this number and we're going to program this. And so when we score, that's when we get one of the birds. We are going to broadcast bird eaten. So in our number, we're just going to listen for that message whenever a bird gets eaten. The score variable is already going up. That happens in the player here. So we don't have to worry about changing the score. What our number is going to do is just display the current score. Okay, so we're going to add an event, and we'll add a couple things. So we'll have a couple different events. So when we get start game, we're going to want to change the current. Actually, let's do that later. Okay. So when we receive bird eaten, we just want to update the current score. And the way we're going to do this is we're going to get a number from the score and then map that to our costume. So we will use under looks, we're going to say switch costume to. But one thing that's kind of cool that we can do here is we can actually throw a number in here. So we're going to take this costume number and we're going to set it to the number of the score. So I can put my score. Oops. Wait, how do I do this? Maybe I just put the score directly in here. Let's see if that works. Start. No, I didn't think so. Okay. So let's see. Let's go back and look at this. Switch costume to. Costume number. Wait. Okay, there's a way to do this. Okay, I just want to test this for a second. It should just work with score. Switch costume to score. We have the costumes. Oh, I haven't added the other costumes. Whoops. Okay. Let's go to our numbers and add the rest of our numbers. And so we have... the problem here is that we're starting with 0, but we'll fix that in a second. But now, if I run this, we should see the score go up. But it's not going to match. Okay, so what we want to do is set the costume to score +1, since we start at 0. But when we start, actually that's what we need to do. So when we start out, let's set our costume to number 0. Okay. Okay, it seems like we're off by 1. So maybe we don't need to do +1? Let's see. Now we're off by 2.
I think it's because it started at
Okay, let's look at this again. So 0 should be 0. 1 is 1. Or no, this is 1. Oh, maybe we need to do -1. Let's see. Score -1. Let's try that. Nope. Wrong way. Alright. Let me just look at my example that I did earlier when I figured this out. Because I don't remember how I did it now. Okay, I'm resetting the score here, but I thought I already did that. Okay, let's double check. I think I did that here. When I receive start game, set score to 0. Okay. So that should take care of that. But, okay, I was trying to show this step by step, but one thing that I'm doing is once we get past 10, basically, we're going to end up with this problem where we can only show one digit at a time. So once we get past 10, we're going to be at 11, 12, 13. And so what we want to show is just the second digit, the single digit, and then we'll add the other digit. So to do that, we can use this thing called mod. What mod does is it gives you the remainder of a division. So if I say score divided by 10, if the score is 10, the remainder is 0. If the score is 11, the remainder will be 1. So that gives us the single digit. So we can do score mod 10, but this is going to be off by a little bit. So let's see. If I eat the bird, it's off. For some reason, it's off by 2, which is weird. I'm still having that problem. But, oh, and I need to reset this. Okay. So let's set the score to 25. That'll be the end score. Okay, so now if I get to... So you can see it restarts when I get to 10. It's still off, so we'll have to fix that. But that's a basic idea. We're counting just the ones. Okay, so let's stop and go back to our number. And so we're going to add 1 here to account for the 0. And that should... do it. Let me just double check how I did this. Oh, maybe I put this... Update score display. For some reason I had that in the player earlier. I don't see why that makes a difference. Okay, let's try it one more time. Okay, for some reason we're still off by 1. Alright, let me see if I'm doing something weird with the player. Okay, when I receive bird eaten, changing score. Okay, for some reason I had this in a different thing. Let's see if that makes a difference. So I'll just make a new message, update score. And so now instead of using the bird eaten, I'll use update score. Okay, I'm not sure why that makes a difference. I guess I'm triggering bird eaten more than once at some point. But now we have the score matching. But here's where we're going to get one more layer of goofiness. So when I get to 10 or 11, now I'm getting the single digit, but I'm not getting the 10th place digit. So I'm just going to do one of these. We're not going to go up to a score of like 100. But what I can do if I want to get that 10th place digit, I'm just going to duplicate my current number. So I'm going to duplicate this, and I'll put this in front. So this is going to be our 10th place digit. And this is almost exactly the same, but the math is slightly different. So now, instead of getting the remainder, we're just going to divide by 10 and get that digit. So we're going to do slightly different math here. So we're going to take the score and we're going to divide it by 10. So if our score is 20 and we divide it by 10, it'll be 2. And then we're just going to display that 2 in our digit. But to make it work correctly, we do not want to have the extra decimal. So we can use this floor function, which just cuts off that decimal. So it's sort of like just cutting off the remainder that we used before. And then we still have to add 1 to deal with the 0. Okay, so let's see if this works. This is definitely one of the more weird limitations of Scratch, is that you can't just display text. When we use P5, we'll be able to do this in a much more simple way. But it's kind of some fun math to play with. But now you can see my score is working normally. And so when I hit 25, I should go to the beginning. There we go. I'll fix my birds later. Okay, so that's it for our UI. Real quick, when you post your documentation for this week, you can go over whatever you added to the game. But now we're getting close to the end of our Scratch project. So we want to be able to share our games with people. And so if you're, once you're ready to share the game, what you're going to do is just click on this share button. And that just makes the game public. So you can, if I take this link here and I copy it, I'm going to open it in incognito window so it'll not be logged into my account. And so this is how it will show up if you share it with somebody to play it. You can add some instructions here, you can add notes and credits, and then they can play the game by clicking here, or they can go into the full screen version here. So you can share the game with other people. People can give you feedback. There's a comment section, and you can write instructions. So you could write, let's actually make this look a little bit better. So we can say, move the cat using the arrow keys and eat 25 birds. So we can just explain the goal of the game, and we can say, for MMP 210 programming class. You can write whatever you want there. It doesn't necessarily have to be about our class. And then you can give it a better name if you want to. And then we can also make changes. So any changes that we make are going to reflect on the published page. So for example, I don't actually want to show the score variable here. So I'm just going to go back to my variables and turn off the score variable and click save. And so now if I go back to the project page, you can see that update is already there. So this is just going to show whatever the most recent version of the game is. So for this week, when you go to publish, you can take a screenshot of your published version of the game, which is going to look like this. So I'm going to take a quick screenshot of this. And then I'm also going to include the link when I publish on OpenLab. So you can include a video and more documentation if you want to. I'm just going to show this adding the link real quick. So I'm going to add a new post. And I'm going to call this my Scratch project. And so I'll start with the screenshot that I just took. And then I'll add a link that says play my Scratch game here. And then if I want to link the text, I can, just paste in the link, but if I want to link the text, I can select this text and click this link button and then paste the link in there. And then I can also change the link to open in a new tab. And so if we preview this real quick, you can see the link here, and if I go here, it's going to go to my Scratch game. So that way other people can play it, they can give you feedback, and you can share it with people. And they can also see your code as well. So, if they click on see inside, they'll be able to see the code that you used. So this is a good way to kind of share your project with other people, to also look at the way that other people have approached writing their code. So yeah, when you're done adding your documentation, I can't publish because I have to add a category. So let's add a new category called, or actually this is still documentation. We haven't finished this yet. So I'm just going to continue calling this documentation. And remember, that is the link that you're going to submit on Brightspace when you're all done with everything. So that's our blog post 5, which is due next week. That's our last blog post for Scratch, other than the final version of the Scratch project, which is going to be due 2 weeks after that, so in 3 weeks. Okay, so that's it. Any questions before we do some workshop time? Okay.